Hey, it's Elijah Winfield.
And I'm Zach Mason.
And this is the More Than My Story podcast. We've got another episode for you. We're here to get to know people. We're trying to hear about your stories, your lives, and what you've been through and how you overcame that. So we've got Matt here with us. You want to introduce yourself?
I am Matt Lindgren.
Matt Lindgren?
Yes.
Where are you from?
I'm from Minnesota originally. Dalbo, Minnesota, tiny town.
And is that was where you were born and raised?
Yeah, I was born in Cambridge, but we didn't have a hospital in Dalbo, so Cambridge, Minnesota is where I was born.
And then grew up in Delbo?
And grew up around Dalbo.
Around
yeah.
Delbo.
Around Dalbo.
So how was life growing up in Delbo, Minnesota?
It was pretty awesome. I don't know. As a kid, I just rode bike and tagged along with my brothers.
So would you say, you had pretty decent childhood?
Yeah, I guess so. My brothers are 5 and 7 years older than I.
Oh, okay.
So it was a little rough. I had to learn how to hold my own quick.
Yeah, stand up for yourself.
Right.
So, when because you kind of had some hesitation of like, it could have been a good childhood, kind of was. What was,
Oh, it was just, everybody has problems in their life, but my brothers used me as a guinea pig on a lot of things.
Okay.
So I was like the test dummy.
Okay,
for them.
For what? For what?
For all kinds of stuff. I learned how to ride bike by them pushing me down a huge hill.
Oh, I bet that was fun.
Yeah. Dislocated my little shoulder, and
ouch.
They popped it back in for me. It's okay.
So how was your home life? Like, how was your relationship with your parents?
Oh, relationship with parents. My parents were divorced when I was young. Like, I was poor. So it was hit and miss with both of them.
So
because they both didn't like each other after the divorce.
So did you live with mom? Did you live with dad? What did
I
that
started
look
out
like?
living with my dad for about 8 years. 8 years, probably, 9. And then I moved out to Seattle, Washington with my mother when I was like 15.
How was that transition? Did the brothers follow? Did they come with? Or?
Nope, it was just me.
So how was life in Seattle? Like, what you said about 15?
It was totally different from where I grew up. I grew up in like the country. So you can ride your bike, go to the freaking lake, or just be free all day long, and when the sun starts coming down, get home.
Right.
So, but Seattle was a totally different story. Totally different. I lived in SeaTac, Washington, and that's like the city compared to where I'm from, the country.
Yeah. So
it was a kind of an amazing transition. I went to school out there, and it was definitely something different.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, was how was the school transition?
Yeah, the school was way different. If it snowed a quarter inch, they'd cancel school.
Yeah.
Because of all the hills and everything there, and they're not used to driving in that because the weather's so nice usually. But when I was there, they say it was rainy. It's a rainy place to be, but when I was there, I guess it was during a drought because it seemed just like Minnesota weather. So, and the kids there, a lot different from the kids where I grew up. Buses were a lot quieter going to school and more orderly, but we were a little more wild in the country there when I went to school there. On the buses.
So how was your transition into like getting to make new friends or fit in, or how did you
I transitioned fairly well. I don't know, I got to know a lot of different people, and they're kind of more on the edge of edge of the law kind of thing, skipping school. When I started going out there, I skipped school for my first time. Went and scammed McDonald's. Got McDonald's food while I was out there. We took a bus all the way around the city in Seattle.
So is that the first time you had McDonald's?
No.
Well, I don't know.
Oh my gosh!
The way you said that,
no,
I'm
my
like,
town had McDonald's. Man.
You never know.
You never
Not
know.
Dalbo, but Cambridge did. And that's where I went to school.
Yeah, you never know how far out in the country
Yeah, I was pretty. Dalbo's pretty far out there, but yeah, I used to skip school, and we went to the top of the tallest building, and then I ended up seeing one of my mom's coworkers on the bus, and that busted me.
Yep.
Later on that day, I get home, my mom says, "Matt, so how was school today?" And I said, pretty good.
Yeah, not thinking she knew.
Yeah.
And, of course, her friend told her, "Matt, I know you weren't at school today." And I said, "Yeah, Jeff's doing pretty good. I seen him on the bus." You know,
So moving to Seattle, you know, it seems like it was a culture shock.
oh, yeah.
So, you know, this was early teens or
Yep.
late teens
Yeah,
that
like 15.
15 that you were starting to skip school and,
Yep.
you know, kind of do that
14,
kind of stuff.
15, yeah.
So, did that lead you anywhere else?
You know, I first smoked weed in Seattle, Washington, in SeaTac, because a lot of the kids did it. So,
Right.
but I only smoked it a couple times there.
So what age was that?
About 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I ended up moving back to Minnesota after living there for a year. Sorry
So
about
moved
my
back
voice.
in-
I have no teeth. But yeah.
So you moved back to Minnesota. Did you move back with your dad, or your mom moved back with you?
I moved back in with my dad, and my mom, she stayed in Washington State.
What made you do that?
I just wasn't that comfortable there anymore, and my mom was having a hard time dealing with me because she didn't really have to raise us until later on. After they got the divorce, my mom just took us on weekends here and there. So.
And of course, having you at that kind of age, you're being more rambunctious. You're skipping school, smoking weed, whatever.
Right.
You know,
That
moving.
was just once. I experimented once out in Seattle with weed, and that was it.
Well, still, it's just opening
But
up the door to,
Yep.
you know.
When I got back to Minnesota, that's when I had a stepbrother. He turned me on to all kinds of different drugs, like weed, smoking. I smoked cigarettes at like 14, 15 before that. So I had already started smoking cigarettes by about 14 before I moved to Seattle.
Yeah, but you're saying it kind of started rapidly, like, picking up as you went
Yeah,
back.
it picked up big time when I came back. I mean, I got kicked off the bus, and I remember my dad making me ride bike 8 miles to school and back in the middle of winter. The middle of winter in Minnesota is pretty cold.
Yeah.
On the coldest day that I had to ride my bike 8 miles to school was 10 below zero.
Really?
So, yeah.
At what? Like
But I bundled up, of course.
You were probably 16 at that time.
Yeah, I was around 16. So the kids made fun of me as the bus went by me on the road because I was kind of a little bully.
So where were the older brothers at when you came back?
One was going into the Navy. He'd been in the Navy for about a year and a half at that time, or 2 years. And he was in the Navy when I went out to live with my mother. So, and the other brother was living in Cambridge, in the town of Cambridge, with his wife, her girlfriend at the time.
So after you said you started to smoke more with your stepbrother. How did that progress as you got older?
Well, my stepbrother, I started drinking, smoking weed. He had given me methamphetamines for my first time.
What age?
At around 15, 16, getting towards the edge of 16.
How old was your stepbrother?
He was like 35 at the time.
Wow, and you were like 15.
Yeah, and he was living with my stepmother and us at her house, my stepmother's.
Wow.
So,
I mean,
yep, started drinking all that stuff from my stepbrother, basically.
I mean, having that kind of influence around you, 35 and a 15-year-old, there's a big age gap there.
Oh, huge. Yep.
You know, So, I mean, was he into things that ended up kind of having the influence and drive that kind of led you in the direction that you were kind of starting
Kind
to
of,
go?
yeah. Well, he taught me, and a couple of friends taught me how to make LSD and to grow mushrooms. So
So then it started, kind of the manufacture of drugs and,
yeah,
you know,
I never got in trouble for that, which I probably should have. But I'm glad I didn't.
by the grace of God, you didn't.
But I did get in trouble in school with one hit of LSD. So they never even found the hit. They just went off other people. They they told on me, said I had LSD or something, but they never found it. But I don't know how I really got charged with it.
So how did life
Yes.
go on from there? Like after you know.
I went into a Hazelden treatment center for juveniles, and it was a Pioneer House in Plymouth, Minnesota. And I went to treatment through them for 35 days a day.
What age?
I was 16 at that time.
35 days
16 to
stay.
17, yeah.
What was your headspace at that time?
My headspace was like, I
Your
I don't know,
thought.
I got to know a lot of other people, and their thoughts influenced my thoughts, and I've seen some people that were just terrible off for the rest of their lives. They were permanently, just not gonna always ever really gonna be there because they were on like a permanent trip. I remember one of them.
So did that also influence you in, kind of thinking that you don't have a problem?
Yeah, I did see a lot worse off people than but also I knew I had a problem. I knew right away
At
that
16?
drugs. The drugs got me pretty hard. I mean, I went pretty hard, pretty fast when I got back to Minnesota.
So
16, 17.
as that progressed and everything. So did you end up graduating high school?
Nope, but I did get my GED.
Okay.
So,
Was it the drugs, like drug use?
yeah,
or
I
made you
basically
fall
quit
off?
school. Yeah, because of the drug use, and I just didn't think I needed school anymore. And just normal rebellious teenager things, except I took it to an extreme
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
and just quit school. Pursued my drug career at that time. I thought was going to be awesome, but after Hazelden is when I started getting into actually selling and stuff. But
So going to the treatment, didn't you think
it
was it? Do you think it affected you negatively?
I
or?
went to a halfway house after the treatment, and then I I was there for about 7, 8 months, and then I was able to go back to school again, and then I started selling more, like mushrooms and the weed.
So would you say that environment did kind of, you know, like lead you to negative things because of the people that you were around?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I mean, it was like-minded people, and we all wanted to recover, but I don't think as kids we were all that serious about recovery or thought it was that detrimental.
Well, of course.
Right.
To,
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
you
you're
think
not
you're
thinking.
invincible as a kid,
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of.
100%.
You're not thinking about what you're going to be doing at 30 when you're.
Yeah.
No, when you're 16, 17, 18,
Yeah.
But then after the halfway house and I dealt for a little bit, I just dropped off dealing altogether, got sober, and was clean for 5 years. From 18 to maybe 21. Well, I went and had a beer with my dad at 21. So 18, 19, 20, 21. The 5 years clean was after. In between that. I don't know. But
So
maybe it was a little younger than I'm thinking.
what
That I started.
what made you do that? Like what made you like quit everything and stop selling?
I
and
just didn't
stop
want to
using?
do it anymore. I mean, I learned that school was probably my best shot, getting my GED, and that I focused more on that.
So did you have any aspirations in life, like after that fact? That, I mean, you just said that you wanted to go back to school, that you you kind of decided, like, you know what, school would be the better option. Was there anything that, like, drew you closer to that, you know, you looked forward and you had goals for because of you wanting to go back to school, get your GED and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, did you want to do something further with that?
I was constantly testing what I wanted to do in life, always. And then, so I worked at many different places that were actually pretty prominent, good places. Onan, Cummins, Newage, they make big hospital generators. Federal Cartridge, I worked at, they make ammunition, like, and then, but yeah.
So you got a few decent jobs after the fact.
Big time.
So, you know, you getting those jobs, and how did just life progress? Like, where was Matt at? Like, where'd you end up?
When my dad passed away, I was 21. So I started drinking a little heavy and then quit for a while. And then I just started up and never stopped. I quit for probably 5 years, like from to 26 years old. I had a daughter that was born in 2001, and she was the love of my life, my little baby. And my ex had some questionable actions, and me and her broke up, and that was about it there. I didn't really see my child much after that.
So your child would now be, what, almost 24?
She's 23.
Yeah.
This
You know,
is 2024. She was born January 25th.
so, you know, where did that kind of lead your addiction? Like, what depths did...
When I wasn't able to be around my daughter anymore, I think is when it really picked up. Because I could have pressed charges on the mother for basically kidnapping, because I had court cases against her, you know, for visitation and make sure that, you know, that my rights weren't given away.
Mm-hmm.
And I never gave my rights up.
So, you know...
But she just disappeared. I could have pressed charges on her for, you know, like kidnapping, but I didn't think that would be the right thing to do for my daughter.
Right. So you just said that your father passed away, you had a daughter,
A breakup.
Yeah.
which led that you couldn't see the daughter. You know,
3
that's
years of fighting. Yeah.
that's a lot of stuff to deal with that can bring a lot of guilt and shame that can, you know, send an addict off. So, you know, what did that look like? You know,
Didn't look good. Yeah, I don't remember a lot of that time because of it, because of drinking and blackouts and things like that, of that nature, and it just, I didn't really care much about life. I just wanted to have fun and party.
So when all this was happening, you know, were you still in Minnesota?
Yes.
So what ended up, you know, bringing you to Ohio?
Okay, I moved from Minnesota to Williston, North Dakota, and that was following the oil boom in 2012.
Okay.
So, me and two other buddies went out there. One buddy picked me up in Minnesota, and the other one came from Ohio, and we all met in Fargo, Moorheads, North Dakota, Minnesota. So then we went from there to Williston, North Dakota, where we tried to make as much money as we could.
Right.
Because it was an oil boom and money was flowing around there.
Right. So you went to North Dakota for, you know, opportunity.
Right.
And then after the fact, and I'm sure based off of what you said, you know, addiction was still very prevalent.
Oh, yeah.
You know, drinking was something.
Heavy.
Yeah,
I was in North Dakota for like 6 months, and then we decided to go to Sturgis on a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
I was only supposed to be gone for 2 weeks max, and I ended up spending 3 years of my life there in Deadwood, South Dakota, and Lead, Deadwood, South Dakota, and I worked at a place called Recreational Springs, where it was like a resort, and it was a snowmobile resort, so people could rent snowmobiles, and I got a sweet deal doing that. And then I saved my money throughout the whole winter, and then I ended up investing in a bar, restaurant, and hotel up in Leeds, South Dakota.
So,
Tell us about the bar. Tell us about the story, the bar, the whole story that of how you investing in the bar, becoming part owner, and how all that panned out, and the tragedy that happened that caused you
yeah.
to really not be able to continue that, and
Right.
then where you went from there. So
Yeah.
how did that start?
So
How
it
did
started with, I guess, went on that vacation. I seen Sturgis for my first time, and then after Sturgis was over, found different, odd jobs here and there, and ended up getting a job at Recreational Springs, and I saved $15,000 over the winter. And then I ended up meeting these people that were basically starting a bar, restaurant, and continue operation of the hotel that was already pre-existing. So I invested my $15,000 that I had saved up into that, and then that was probably one of the best investments in my drunken life. Was doing that. I made hand over fist money back on my investment, so it was well worth it for me. I ended up being part owner just by buying into it and signing a couple papers. It was nothing. It's kind of like a job, you know. But we had some famous people we had hired to go through Sturgis, and that was like the L.A. Guns. Kid Rock visited the place. It was pretty awesome when he showed up. That was kind of neat, and I'll never forget it. It was one of the biggest people I met, and but through owning that, I had that for about 6 to 8 months before a snowstorm happened. It snowed 59 inches, 1 inch shy of 6 feet, and the whole roof collapsed over the restaurant, or over the kitchen area for the restaurant, and put cracks in the balcony above the kitchen, and then water went down into the kitchen and ruined it all. And we had basically just leased the place, and we opted out of our lease. And we each had to pay some money to get out of that. And then I moved back to Williston, North Dakota.
Were your friends still there?
Where?
Were they at Williston? Or?
No, actually, we had all separated. In the meantime, we were still. One of my buddies always went there every summer, and I'd lived there for in Leeds, South Dakota, for 3 years, 2 to 3 years, and it was awesome. But yeah, one of my buddies, Brandon, he would come back and forth, just to pop in and see how he's doing every now and again. And another friend of mine has property up on the mountain there on Strawberry Hill. It's awesome. And they came back periodically. But then when the restaurant went down, I went north again to Williston, North Dakota. And then one of my buddies followed me there. And he set up shop there, and I set up there, and became a manager for Arby's, and had a 5-bedroom house up there with a 4-car garage for $400 a month.
Wow.
When a one bedroom up there
crazy.
at the time was going for over 2,000 because of the oil boom. It was crazy rent, but I had cheap rent because I was a manager of a restaurant, and they had a house for the managers. For me being an assistant manager, I had a nice opportunity there to have my own house. And then the other employees lived in a, they had housing set up for them
Mm-hmm.
because their housing was really hard to come by in Williston, North Dakota, in the oil boom
Yeah.
because it was such a small town.
So, how did you end up in Ohio, and what? How did you end up in treatment?
Williston, North Dakota. I was basically kicked out of my apartment there in Williston. 'Cause after everything went down in in South Dakota, I went back up north, and I hopped different houses after the owner of the one house I was renting for $400 a month sold it, and then I moved to another house, and then they sold that one, and then I had to find my own apartment. So I had my own apartment, and I was working at I ended up losing my job at Arby's, and I moved to Famous Dave's restaurant, and then I lost the apartment I had there when I was working at Famous Dave's, and I moved to Minnesota with my buddy Brandon, and that was Bemidji, Minnesota. And his mom owns a campground down in Ohio here in Frankfort. So he didn't want to be up in the cold anymore because it is freezing in the wintertime there, no doubt. It gets very cold, like 60 below sometimes. So he wanted to move back where it was warmer. I didn't really have too many other options. I had a lot of family in Minnesota, but I didn't want to impose upon them. So I ended up moving down to Ohio with my buddy and to the campground. We started out in the campground, then we got a place right down the hill from the campground, in a by a creek. So it was pretty neat.
So that by this point, you've been bouncing around, you've lost some things.
Right.
Now you're living with a buddy again. You're out here in Ohio. Addiction, the drinking has progressed, I'm sure.
Yep.
Just, hearing, Sturgis is a capital for just Party City. So the lifestyle of that, I'm sure, has taken with you. But, what was that kind of breaking point of like, hey, I need treatment and I need help?
Well, I moved here in 2019, end of 2019. I got my own place in the beginning of 2020, and it was just a room for rent out of a house. Is basically a sleeping room, and that was like $275 a month, which was affordable. So that then I could afford to drink, and I just progressed drinking. And then I started using cocaine again, and that progressed. And after 3 years of that, I had enough. I lost my apartment or the room for rent or whatever that I had, and I drank myself into a hole basically. And I stayed out at my buddy's house, and for a couple days after I had to move out of my room, and I just wanted to kill myself basically because my life had gone down so bad. I was thinking it went down so bad it wasn't worth living anymore. So I ended up in 1A. That's basically the spot where I knew this was it, and I'm done drinking forever. I just can't do it anymore. I literally could not do it anymore. It would have killed me.
Yeah, your body just couldn't take it anymore.
So I spent 4 days in ICU getting off the alcohol. They had IVs going into me. And I know towards the end of the 4 days that they had me on IVs that I never wanted to go through that again in my life because that was just too taxing on everything.
Yeah, that true acceptance of powerlessness.
And I apologize if I didn't say my story correctly earlier because I don't remember. Everything's
yeah.
kind of hazy
No, we
what
get
I
it.
was using. So,
Of course.
but yeah, I was in that hospital, and then they put me in 1A after I was detoxed because they said if I wasn't on IVs and stuff and I just tried to quit cold turkey, I probably would have died.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I was
Yeah.
drinking a half gallon of whiskey a day,
Yeah.
Mm.
That's
and
yeah.
and
It's a lot.
oh yeah,
And alcohol is absolutely one of the drugs if you're trying to come off of, you
Yeah.
can die from
One
the
of the most
withdrawal.
dangerous.
that and Xanax. Yeah,
Mhm.
Xanax, you can die from the withdrawal as well.
Wow.
So I was lucky there. Spent about a week in 1A there, and then they put me into Rulon, the Rulon Center, which was it was a 90-day treatment center, and I was like,
Mhm.
I never heard of 90 days before. Usually it's like 30, 35,
Yeah.
but I ended up staying there the full 90
Yep.
because I needed it, and I then applied to come to Reach, the program of Reach for Tomorrow Recovery, and this place has been a godsend basically ever since. I mean, I've learned how to be the not drunk me, not so angrily, because I lost my excuse.
Yeah.
You know, I lost my excuse to be mean and be grumpy just because I was off alcohol or sober for the day.
Yeah.
Because I lost my excuse. The reason I did lose my excuse for that is because I wasn't hungover. I wasn't feeling like crap, so I was being mean to people because I just didn't want to interact with anybody. Just wanted to get my job done so I could have that drink when I get home at night.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so then I'd be all happy. It'd be like an extreme high when I was drinking and all happy and doing lines of cocaine. Woohoo, this is great. It was like an extreme high, and then the next day I'd regret the yesterday that I just spent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it was just terrible, man. It like beat me into the ground. So I was, when I go to work and I was hungover, that was the sober me.
Mhm.
Pissed off, not giving a shit about anything or anyone. But then when I'd get drunk, I'd be all happy and blah blah blah.
Everybody's
you know,
best friend.
Everybody's
Yeah.
best friend, and we'd all be buddies. We'd all do lines, and we'd all drink. And but the consequence of that was the next day, and then it was like a constant cycle.
So how was the process of, you know, after the withdrawal, you said you were in Rulon. What was the process of getting just from how you were living to not getting that, all-time high that you would reach?
Yeah. I know what you're trying to ask. You're
Yeah,
like, when you're
I see what you're trying to say.
we,
Like
you
the,
said you
the
came
extremes roller coaster of
here. Yeah.
that.
You said you came here and you
And I balanced. I had to. I was
Yeah.
grumpy when I first got here.
Yeah.
because
And
that's
even
the way I
after-
believed. That's the way I believed.
But
I
that's
was
even
supposed to be sober.
that's even after the withdrawal, the 1A,
Right.
and 90 days of Rulon, right?
Because it was an ingrained thing in my head. When I was sober, I would act a certain way. When I was drinking, I would act a different way.
Yeah. So
Right.
how'd
So
you
it was kind of ingrained into my head. So eventually, I was able to drop that off,
how?
just by realizing that I'm not hungover and I don't need to feel bad every day just because I'm not drinking. And then I realized, hey, I can have some fun without drinking, and that's
Mhm.
amazing, you
Yeah.
know.
Right.
So it was like my train of thought shifted 180 and actually more like a 720 or something. You know,
Just
I mean,
spun all the way.
yeah, all the way,
So-
a couple times.
So were there things that you can look back on that you can recognize that it was like, you know what, that's what helped me. Like that's
The
kind of
defining
some
moment.
Oh yeah,
Like,
there's
yeah.
lots of them that
That-
I've had. I mean, just realizing the 760 realization that, hey, you know, I can have fun sober. I don't have to always be a jerk when I'm not sober. or when I am sober, I don't always have to be a jerk. And
Yeah.
then because now I'm sober, and it's a totally different feeling. It's
So
more
what
of
are
a
some
great
examples of
feeling.
Yeah,
that?
like when did you start? When did you start like realizing like, hey, I'm being a jerk, like, and I don't have to be this way, so I need to change this.
That took a while because I didn't know any other way. Basically, I had trained myself over the years that when I was sober, I was an asshole,
Right.
and that was it.
Yeah.
But when it started to balance out, and I wasn't withdrawing off alcohol and feeling like crap all the time when I woke up, and when I started feeling better,
Yeah, have some clarity.
and I could, it took a little bit for my brain to heal. I think like at least 3 months,
Yeah.
just to get an understanding
It
of
has to happen.
what life really is versus what I thought it was
Yeah.
and perceived. And I perceived the wrong way,
Yeah.
and it was a very humbling experience, and I kind of realized how shitty I treated people.
Right.
Yeah.
So I wanted to take measures to counter that, to actually balance that out so it's not such an extreme anymore.
So,
like when I'm
what are some
drunk or
things-
high to when I'm sober, now it's kind of more of an even keel.
So what are
I
some
mean,
things
routines.
that you do? Yeah, like your routine. Like what's your
Routines.
do you ever catch yourself slipping where you're like, oh hey, I'm being a jerk and I don't need to be a jerk right now, or oh
Right,
hey,
yeah.
like what
Or,
what are
or
those
I used to always have this fight or flight instinct, and it was always the fight that would come out in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn not to be like that, because if I be like that, then I'm going to get charges pressed on me.
Yeah, you started.
When I'm used to dealing with a bunch of renegade people
Yeah.
and kind of, relentless people that didn't interact with the law or anything like that, violence was just a part of life.
So like there was a shift of self-awareness. Obviously, if you're able to identify, you're being the jerk, you're not treating people kindly, was there routines, was there like, for example, like church, or was it the connection with others? What was it? What did that look like for you to even become self-aware enough to even realize like, hey, you know what? I might be being a jerk, or I'm not being as compassionate as I should in this situation.
I prayed a lot over it. I learned through Reach here that build a relationship with God and He'll help you, walk you through it.
Amen.
It doesn't mean that, oh God, make me sober. Well, God's going to be like, no, that's for you to do. That's your thing to do, not mine. I'm here to help you when you do decide that. And He has been there. God has. And I can't describe it much of any other way except for like the routines have changed in my life, where I'm not just, going to work, get off work, drink, blah, blah, blah. That was my routine. And then now my routine has shifted. And it's made me really pay more attention to what's around me.
Mm-hmm.
And bring myself into more of a how would God do this, or how would Jesus do this?
Yeah.
And because I know I wasn't doing it right.
Kind of just being aware of what you're putting into your body.
Right. That's always that's always
and
been advice I've given to people is, like look at where you're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Take a moment to feel the seat underneath you.
Yeah.
Take a moment to look at the sky and the different clouds. What's don't look at your phone what the weather says. Look at the weather and what it
look
looks like.
at the weather and what it looks like it's
what
going to be.
you predicted the weather.
Yeah.
Smell the air. You know what I mean? Take a deep breath.
Yeah. So
Feel.
Literally
Feel the
where
textures
you're
around
at
you.
right this
Yeah.
second.
right. Like when
Ground
I was using,
yourself.
I was just chasing a hint of a feeling, or to get rid of feelings.
Right.
So it's always a
So-
chase of outside, to where there was never that
Now-
moment of just, you know what, I'm right here,
Now
right
I don't
now.
feel like I'm chasing anything. I feel like I'm kind of walking down a path, and that's more peaceful. Less irritation from people, more loving of people. And I was never really a people person. I mean, I had my few favorites, and that was about it. And now it's just totally shifted. I mean, I care about what you think, kind of. I care about what you think, but not to the extent that it's going to be a detriment to me.
Right.
Right. It's a
So
healthy,
it's
like,
a healthy
level of, like,
healthy level of understanding.
yeah,
Instead of just always
just like, oh, I don't care.
screw
Yeah.
everybody,
Like, I'm going to respect you enough to
I'm
hear
gonna
you
do
out,
my stuff.
but I'm going to take some inventory of,
Right.
like, you know what, there might be some truth to that, or there's no truth, or you know what, you're absolutely right.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So would you say that that's kind of brought you to the space of where you're at now? Do you feel very grounded and on the right path?
I feel tipsy here and there, but that's normal. Everybody walks.
I hope not.
Well, not like I was drinking tipsy, but like I was walking and I tripped and stumbled. Everybody
Yeah,
does.
Yeah, of course.
Everybody does. But when you are drinking, you are stumbling a heck of a lot more
Right.
Yeah.
in all aspects of life.
So would you say that, like, through your journey and, coming to reach that, like, where you sit now, it's kind of, even when you divert off center, like, it's just easier to kind of bring it back to center.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I was talking about with somebody else the other day. Always keep a lifeline close to you.
Mhm.
I mean, it's okay to go out there and test the waters, but make sure you're not over testing
Yeah.
and getting yourself into deep water where you
Right.
can't swim out of it.
Yeah, I think that just comes with, we all have value. Don't try and overvalue or undervalue yourself.
Right.
Like, if you can't swim in 6 foot, don't go out there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, just kind of take it for what it is.
Hey, there's
know what
weeds
you're
over
capable-
there. Your feet are going to get caught.
Yeah.
Even if you
Yeah.
can swim, there's problems.
Yeah.
And make sure you know what's ahead of you before you jump in.
Yep.
Test the waters first.
It's gonna
Don't
grab
be-
you and not
yeah.
let go.
Right.
Yeah. So where are you at now? Like, how long do you have clean?
I have 1 year, 1 month, and 4 days clean right now.
Wow.
That's a miracle.
Yeah.
Walking miracle right there.
Right. And I mean, sometimes it's not as easy for me to look and see the changes that I have made
Amen.
Mhm.
because it's just I'm there through it and it's gradual and it needs to be gradual right now. Although I would like to get your aspect on what you think and how I've changed. Because Zach, he's known me for a little bit.
I do have a little bit more of an inside scoop on that. I do.
Yeah. It's better to get an outside view of it anyway, sometimes for me. So what do you think?
I definitely, I watched you walk into Rulon. I definitely saw a broken man that was dealing with a lot going on in his life, a lot of guilt and shame, but I also saw someone that wanted to find strength. He wanted to find a different way of life, and throughout this journey, you haven't been easy to deal with.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say that no matter what, you have never stopped trying.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of you, of where you're at today. I really am. I think a lot of growth has happened. And it was a blessing to meet you because you've taught me a lot about myself. And yeah.
One of the things I've enjoyed more is trying to help and teach people. Because I've got a lot of knowledge that I can share.
Yeah.
I'm glad I get the opportunity to do that here. And it helps me out as well, watching somebody's light come on, it's pretty
Yeah.
neat.
Watch the flip switch. The switch flip.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
The switch
That'll work.
flip. The flip switch.
The flip switch. Yeah. The
Yeah.
light come on.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get to see, first day at Rulon, Matt.
Right.
But first day at Reach, Matt. Yeah.
I know I was in rough shape. I look a lot healthier. I know that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think you carry yourself a lot better. You value yourself a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I think I see that that's probably the biggest thing I can say is I can see that you value yourself.
I would absolutely agree with that.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that, guys.
Yeah.
See, it's nice to get an outside view sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, a year and a month,
Dude, that's huge.
it deserves an applause for sure.
It does.
Yeah.
You should absolutely be proud of yourself.
I think it's a year and a month. It could be a year and 2 months. I don't know.
All right, well,
Gotta be a year and a month.
normally we end these off with a prayer. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm going to have Zach end us with on this episode.
Father, I just want to thank you for, having Matt just tell his story, express his experience, strength, and hope. And, he's leaned on you. He's seeked out the connection with you. And we all see it. And I know you see it as well. The growth that this man has made. Please continue to walk with him as he walks with you. And please just bless his future, soften his heart, and let him give back what has freely been given to him. And in Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Amen.